Finding many outlaws and discontented fugitives, he addressed their passions, and succeeded in placing himself at their head. Instead of measuring his sword with his sovereign again, he adopted the wiser policy of imitating his countrymen, and making his fortune by plundering the more opulent places of southern Europe. The first attempt of this powerful gang was upon England, where, finding Alfred too powerful to be coped with, he stood over to the mouth of the Seine, and availed himself of the state to which France was reduced. Horulf, however, did not limit his ambition to the acquisition of booty. He wished permanently to enjoy some of the fine countries he was ravaging, and after many treaties made and broken, received the duchy of Normandy from the hands of Charles the Simple as a fief, together with Gisla, the daughter of the French monarch, in marriage. Thus did a mere pirate found the family which in a few years gave sovereigns to England, Naples, and Sicily, and spread the fame of their talents and prowess throughout the world. Nor was Europe open to the depredations of the northern pirates only. Some Asiatic Moslems, having seized on Syria, immediately invaded Africa, and their subsequent conquest in Spain facilitated their irruption into France, where they pillaged the devoted country with but few substantial checks. Masters of all the islands in the Mediterranean, their corsairs insulted the coasts of Italy and even threatened the destruction of the Eastern Empire. While Alexis was occupied in a war with Pansignaces on the banks of the Danube, Zachas, a Saracen pirate, scoured the archipelago, having, with the assistance of an able Smyrniote, constructed a flotilla of 40 brigantines, and some light fast-rowing boats, manned by adventurers like himself. After taking several of the surrounding islands, he established himself sovereign of Smyrna, that place being about the centre of his newly acquired dominions. Here his fortunes prospered for a time, and Solomon, Sultan of Nicaea, son of the Grand Solomon, sought his alliance, and married his daughter about A.D. 1093. But in the following year, young Solomon being persuaded that his father-in-law had an eye to his possessions, with his own hand stabbed Zachas to the heart. The success of this freebooter shows that the Eastern emperors could no longer protect or even assist their islands. Maritime pursuits had now revived, the improvement of nautical science was progressing rapidly, and the advantages of predatory expeditions, especially when assisted and masked by commerce, led people of family and acquirements to embrace the profession. The foremost of these were the Venetians and Genoese, among whom the private adventurers, stimulated by an enterprising spirit, fitted out armaments, and volunteered themselves into the service of those nations who thought proper to retain them; or they engaged in such schemes of plunder as were likely to repay their pains and expense. About the same time the Roxolani, or Russians, became known in history, making their début in the character of pirates, ravenous for booty, and hungry for the pillage of Constantinople, a longing which 900 years have not yet satisfied. Pouring hundreds of boats down the Borysthenes, the Russian marauders made 4 desperate attempts to plunder the city of the Cæsars, in less than 2 centuries, and appear only to have been repulsed by the dreadful effects of the celebrated Greek fire. England in the meantime had little to do with piracy, nor had she anything worthy the name of a navy. Yet Coeur de Lion had given maritime laws to Europe. Her seamen, in point of skill, were esteemed superior to their contemporaries, and King John enacted that those foreign ships which refused to lower their flags to that of Britain should, if taken, be deemed lawful prizes. Under Henry III., though Hugh de Burgh, the governor of Dover Castle, had defeated a French fleet by casting lime into the eyes of his antagonists, the naval force was impaired to such a degree that the Normans and Britons were too powerful for the Cinque Ports, and compelled them to seek relief from the other ports of the kingdom. The taste for depredation had become so general and contagious that privateers were now allowed to be fitted out, which equipments quickly degenerated to the most cruel of pirates. Nay more, on the disputes which took place between Henry and his barons, in 1244, the Cinque Ports, who had shown much indifference to the royal requisitions, openly espoused the cause of the revolted nobles, and under the orders of Simon de Montfort burnt Portsmouth. From this, forgetful of their motives for arming, they proceeded to commit various acts of piracy, and considering nothing but their private interests, extended their violence not only against the shipping of all countries unfortunate enough to fall in their way, but even to perpetrate the most unwarrantable ravages on the property of their own countrymen. Nor was this confined to the Cinque Port vessels only. The example and the profits were too stimulating to the restless, and one daring association on the coast of Lincolnshire seized the Isle of Ely, and made it their receptacle for the plunder of all the adjacent countries. One William Marshall fortified the little island of Lundy, in the mouth of the Severn, and did so much mischief by his piracies, that at length it became necessary to fit out a squadron to reduce him, which was accordingly done, and he was executed in London. Yet the example did not deter other persons from similar practices. The sovereign, however, did not possess sufficient naval means to suppress the enormities of the great predatory squadrons, and their ravages continued to disgrace the English name for upwards of 20 years, when the valour and conciliation of the gallant Prince Edward brought them to that submission which his royal parent had failed in procuring. Those harum-scarum expeditions, the Crusades, were perhaps influential in checking piracy, although the rabble that composed the majority of them had as little principle as the worst of the freebooters. From the time that Peter the Hermit set Europe in a blaze, all ranks and all nations streamed to the east, so that few vessels were otherwise employed than in conveying the motley groups who sought the shores of Palestine, some from religious zeal, some from frantic fanaticism, some from the desire of distinction, some for the numberless privileges which the Crusaders acquired, and the rest and greater portion for the spoil and plunder of which they had a prospect. The armaments, fitted in no fewer than 9 successive efforts, were mostly equipped with such haste and ignorance, and with so little choice, that ruinous delays, shipwrecks, and final discomfiture were naturally to be expected. Still the effect of such incredible numbers of people betaking themselves to foreign countries advanced civilization, although vast means of forwarding its cause were buried in the East, and those who assert that no benefit actually resulted cannot deny that at least some evils were thereby removed. Montesquieu says that Europe then required a general shock, to teach her, by the sight of contrast, the theorems of public economy most conducive to happiness; and it is evident that notwithstanding these follies wasted the population of Europe, squandered its treasures, and infected us with new vices and diseases, still the Crusades diminished the bondage of the feudal system, by augmenting the power of the king and the strength of the commons, while they also occasioned a very increased activity in commerce, thus taming the voracity of men's spirits, increasing agriculture in value from the safety it enjoyed, and establishing a base for permanent prosperity. End of chapter 1.